A sharp crash split the silence. Somewhere in the vast expanse of the living room, glass had shattered into 1,000 tiny fragments. The sound ricocheted against the marble walls and polished floors, echoing like an alarm through the grand house. Hyatt's scrubbing hands froze mid-motion. Yellow gloves sagged heavy at her wrists, dripping soapy water back into the red bucket at her side. She turned quickly, heart jumping at the noise. She expected to see what anyone would expect after the sound of breaking glass, a child's startled cry, maybe a small scream of pain, perhaps even the little boy running toward her with wide, wet eyes and trembling lips. But none of that happened. 4-year-old Kofi stood by the toppled vase, his small body still. Shards glittered like diamonds at his bare feet. Yet he did not cry, did not flinch, did not even acknowledge the chaos at his toes. Instead, the boy in the faded blue t-shirt moved with eerie calm. Without a single word, he padded softly across the thick rug, each tiny step measured and deliberate, and stopped in front of the far wall. Then, with a strange resolve that made Hyatt's stomach twist, he pressed his face flat against the pale plaster. His nose sank into the cold surface, his arms stiff and straight at his sides. He stayed there, rigid, silent. His small shoulders rose and fell as though each breath cost him something. Hyatt blinked rapidly, her scrub brush slipping into the bucket. "Kofi," she called gently, unsure if she was interrupting a game she didn't understand. "Sweetheart, are you playing?" The boy didn't answer. He didn't even twitch. Hyatt's eyes darted between the scattered glass and the stiff figure of the child. Confusion furrowed her brow. This wasn't right. Children cried when they were hurt. Children laughed when they played. But Kofi stood motionless, like a statue set in punishment. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Still, he remained frozen with his face pressed into the wall. The house around them seemed to hold its breath. Hyatt sighed, peeling off one of her gloves with a snap. She set it on the edge of the bucket and moved cautiously toward the boy. Her steps made no sound against the rug, but her pulse pounded in her ears. When she knelt beside him, she reached out carefully. "Enough hiding now," she coaxed softly. "Come away, little one. You'll hurt yourself." At first there was no response. Then Kofi's lips began to move. Hyatt leaned closer, her ear nearly brushing the crown of his curls. His forehead never left the wall. His words slipped out so faintly she almost thought she imagined them. "Face the wall." Hyatt froze. Her brows drew together. "What did you say?" Again, in the same paper-thin whisper, he repeated, "Face the wall." The hair on the back of Hyatt's neck prickled. The words didn't sound playful. They sounded practiced, like a rule recited from memory. Her stomach twisted with unease. "Why, baby? Who told you that?" But Kofi did not answer. His forehead pressed harder into the plaster, as though he wanted to disappear inside it. His little hands remained stiff at his sides, fingers curled tight against his thighs. He looked less like a child at play, and more like a prisoner obeying a command. Hyatt's throat went dry. She had only been working in this house for 2 days. She didn't know all the boy's habits yet, didn't know the full scope of his moods or quirks, but her instinct screamed that this was not normal. This wasn't some silly hiding game. Something darker pulsed beneath the surface. "Kofi," she tried again, more firmly now. She softened her tone with his full name, hoping it would break through whatever trance held him. "Firma, Kofi, I'm talking to you. Tell me what's wrong." The boy's voice cracked on the reply. "Face the wall." Hyatt drew back as if the words themselves had struck her. Her heart thudded hard against her ribs. His whisper carried no joy, no mischief. It was drenched in fear, fear so deep it sounded as though the words had been stitched into his very skin. Her hand trembled where it hovered near his shoulder. She pulled it back. For the first time since arriving at this mansion, Hyatt felt something gnaw at her, a sick unease that threatened to crawl higher and higher into her chest. What had this child been taught? What had he endured? She swallowed hard, her eyes flicking once more toward the scattered shards on the ground. A broken vase was one thing, but this was something else entirely, and as she stared at the rigid little boy, Hyatt remembered a whispered rumor, something one of the older housekeepers had said just days ago when showing her the staff quarters. A careless remark about the last maid. A warning she hadn't thought much of at the time. Now her heart pounded with the terrible suspicion that maybe that warning hadn't been just idle gossip. The rumor had been simple. The last maid had been dismissed for stealing. Nothing more. That was the story whispered among the staff. But no one had mentioned this. The thought flickered through Hyatt's mind as the sharp creak of a door broke her from her unease. She straightened quickly, heart jolting. Heavy, measured footsteps echoed against the marble like a drumbeat of authority. Lennox Price stepped into the room. He was a tall man, his shoulders carrying the weight of command. His brown suit pressed crisp after a long day at the office. His tie was loosened, but his expression was cut from stone, stern, unyielding, a mask he wore in every boardroom and, apparently, in his own home. But when his eyes landed on the sight before him, that mask cracked just slightly, his son's tiny body, stiff as a board, nose pressed hard into the wall. The maid crouched behind him, hands trembling at her sides. Lennox's voice cut the air like a blade. "What is going on here?" Hyatt scrambled to her feet, nearly slipping on the rug, the cloth still clutched in her damp hand. "Sir, She hesitated, her breath rushing. "He's been standing there since morning. At first I thought it was some kind of game, but step away from him." The order lashed out like iron. Lennox's tone brooked no argument. Hyatt's chest tightened, but she forced herself to steady. "Please listen to me," she said, her voice softer now, pleading. "He won't move. He keeps saying, 'I said step away from my son.'" The glare that burned from Lennox's eyes made her flinch, but she stood her ground for a beat longer. The air around them thickened with tension. At that moment, Kofi flinched too, not at Hyatt's movement, but at his father's sharp tone. His forehead pressed harder into the wall, as though trying to merge with it, as though the plaster might protect him from the storm in the room. Hyatt's heart clenched. Ignoring the order, she crouched again, her voice soft, soothing. "Kofi, it's okay. I'm right here," the boy whimpered. His answer came in that same trembling whisper, "Face the wall." Lennox's composure cracked. He strode forward, the floor groaning beneath his weight, and dropped to one knee beside the boy. "Kofi," he said, his voice rough but meant to be gentle. "It's Daddy, look at me now." "Come on, son, look at me." But the child didn't budge. He stayed bound to the wall as though invisible ropes held him there. His breath shook. His words broke. "Face the wall." Hyatt's hands trembled. She raised them, palms outward as if to swear innocence. "Sir, I swear I didn't teach him this. I don't know why he does it. I don't know what he means." Lennox's head snapped toward her, his eyes narrowed, voice sharp. "Then why does he keep saying it? Why does my son sound like he's terrified of me?" The accusation landed like a slap. Hyatt's pulse spiked. Without thinking, her words shot out, raw, unfiltered. Maybe because someone hurt him before. "Did you ever bother to ask what happens in this house when you're not around?" The words echoed against the high ceiling. The silence that followed was heavier than stone. Lennox froze, stunned not just by her defiance, but by the raw possibility she suggested. Kofi's small shoulders shook, a trembling that traveled down his arms and legs. His body looked ready to collapse, yet he stayed pinned to the wall, clinging to those words, clinging to the command that had been beaten into him. Hyatt forced her voice steady, though her chest quivered. She reached toward him again. "Kofi, listen to me. No one is going to hurt you now. Not me, not your dad. You don't have to stay there anymore." But the boy's reply was the same, cracked and broken. "Face the wall." Hyatt crouched lower, ignoring the heat of Lennox's glare boring into her. She brushed the boy's trembling shoulder with the tips of her fingers. "Sweetheart, you've been doing this too long." "Tell me, who told you that?" For the first time, the rigid mask of obedience cracked. Kofi flinched, his head turning ever so slightly, as though the question itself was dangerous. His eyes glistened, dark and wide, heavy with the fear that seemed older than his 4 years. He shook his head fast, side to side, a desperate refusal, like even speaking would summon punishment. Hyatt's voice sharpened, not with anger at him, but to slice through the fog holding him. "Kofi, look at me. I promise you nothing bad will happen. Not anymore. You're safe. Look at me." Slowly, painfully, he turned. His lashes clung wet to his cheeks. His lip trembled. And then, with a hesitation that broke Hyatt's heart, his small hand lifted. It shook as it tugged at the hem of his shirt, dragging the fabric upward. What he revealed froze the air in the room. Blotches marred his lower back, faint, discolored marks in ugly, uneven patterns. Not bruises from clumsy falls, not scratches from playground accidents. They were deliberate, left by a hand, or worse, by a belt. Lennox's breath caught audibly in his throat. His face, usually controlled and unreadable, crumpled with something raw. His voice cracked as the words left him. What is this?" Kofi's lips quivered. His voice came out in a trembling spill, fragile and uneven. She made me. Every time I broke something, every time I didn't listen. She shouted. She laughed. She hit me, and she said, "Face the wall or it'll be worse." The words spilled from Kofi's lips like broken glass, jagged and fragile. His tiny voice trembled with the memory, each syllable a wound carved into his mind. Hyatt's chest constricted with a fury she fought to keep steady. She looked up at Lennox, her eyes burning, voice sharp as steel. "You didn't know. You never asked why he hides. You fired that woman for stealing your money. You filled her place with another maid. But you never saw what she did to your son." Her words fell heavy, like stones hurled at the walls of his pride. Lennox staggered back as if struck, his broad shoulders seeming to fold under the weight. For a man who commanded empires, who wielded his wealth like a shield, the realization pierced through like nothing ever had. His fortune, his travels, his towering businesses, none of it had protected his child from terror within his own home. Hyatt pressed on, her voice trembling but unwavering. "2 weeks ago you dismissed her for theft. Did you once ask if she hurt him? Did you once look at your boy closely enough to see? His back carries her hands, Mr. Price, and worse, his mind carries her voice." Kofi's sobs broke through the silence. He buried his small face into his palms, his words muffled but sharp enough to cut through the room. She said if I tell Daddy, he'll send me away." The billionaire's knees gave out, hitting the floor beside his son. His hands shook violently as he reached toward the trembling boy. No, son, never. I would never send you away." His voice cracked open, raw, desperate. "I failed you. I should have seen. I should have known." The confession hung heavy in the air. Hyatt steadied herself. She brushed a gentle hand across Kofi's curls. "Listen to me, sweetheart. She's gone. She will never come back here, and we'll make sure she answers for what she did." Kofi peeked upward, his eyes swollen from tears, fear and hope wrestling in them. "Promise?" Lennox nodded hard, the weight of his wealth meaningless compared to the weight of his child's trust. Tears blurred his vision. "I swear, son, she'll never hurt you again. Not in this house, not anywhere." That night, the mansion transformed. Silence gave way to action. Lennox was no longer just a CEO making calls. He was a father driven by fury and shame. He dialed his lawyers with a voice low but steady. Marcia, the woman once dismissed for theft, was no longer just a petty criminal in his eyes. She was an abuser, and she would face the law. Hyatt stood near the door, arms folded, watching with hawk-like vigilance. She made sure he didn't back down, made sure that this time he confronted the truth instead of hiding behind wealth and excuses. Within hours, legal gears turned, papers drafted, witness statements prepared, police contacted. Lennox's reputation didn't shield him from responsibility this time. He wielded it instead to ensure justice was not ignored. But Hyatt wasn't finished. Later, she sat Lennox down in the dim glow of the study. Her tone was calm, but her words left no room for comfort. "This boy doesn't just need protection. He needs healing. He needs therapy. Trauma doesn't vanish because you make promises, Mr. Price." Lennox bowed his head, the first time Hyatt had seen him stripped of pride. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "You're right. Tell me what to do." And for once, he listened. He made calls again, but not to business partners or investors, to specialists. to child therapists, to doctors who understood wounds that never bled, but left scars all the same. He opened doors that money alone couldn't fix, because this time he wasn't buying silence. He was choosing to listen. The first therapy session was brutal. Kofi clung to Hyatt's sleeve, his tiny fists locked like chains. His body refused to move toward the small, brightly painted office. His eyes darted to the corners, searching for walls to retreat to. But Hyatt bent low, whispering gently into his ear, "No walls anymore, sweetheart. Just people who care." And somehow he took one small step forward. Days passed. Then a week. Healing wasn't linear. The sound of clinking glass still made Kofi jump, still sent his gaze snapping toward the wall. One afternoon, when another accident scattered pieces across the floor, his small body stiffened. His eyes darted in panic. His knees bent, ready to sprint toward that familiar prison. But Hyatt was faster. She crouched in front of him, steady and sure. "No wall, Kofi, just me. Just Daddy, for the first time." He stayed. That evening, as the sun bled orange through the tall windows, footsteps echoed down the long hallway. Kofi froze at the sound, fear flashing through his dark eyes. His muscles tensed, but instead of pressing himself against plaster, he did something he had never done before. He ran forward, straight into Lennox's arms. The billionaire dropped to his knees, catching his son against his chest. Tears blurred his vision as he buried his face in the boy's hair. His voice cracked as he whispered, "That's my boy. No one will ever silence you again." Behind them, Hyatt stood quietly. Exhaustion tugged at her, but relief bloomed in her chest. The fight wasn't over. Healing would take time. Nights would still be haunted. The words, "face the wall," would linger like a ghost in Kofi's mind. But for the first time in years, the wall was just a wall, and the boy was finally free to face the world. Do you believe that the deepest wounds are the ones no one can see? The kind carried in silence, hidden under brave faces. Share your thoughts below. And if you want more true-to-life stories that uncover hidden pain and unexpected strength, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Every view helps the next story be heard.